on December 14th, 2024, and with my illustrious guest, Brother George Widger, with his many researches and discoveries, and I'm happy to have him on with me, adding much meat to the skeleton of the Jesuit New World Order, run by the Black Pope, overseen by the devil. So, Brother George, I want to welcome you to the broadcast, but I want to read an email that I got from a guy today, and I think it's maybe relevant to the broadcast. So, here it is. One of the first things that Hitler did when becoming chancellor was passing the Enabling Act of 1933, which gave the German cabinet and chancellor final authority and ultimate power in the government. Heritage Foundation, run by Jesuit Kevin Roberts, laid out plans for Donald J. Trump next term, in which final authority and ultimate power will be given to the executive branch and the president. This is why Donald J. Trump told Christians at a rally, quote, "You'll never have to vote again," unquote, weeks before the election. Below should be PDFs to some videos that I find rather interesting. One is Steve Bannon, and I will add Roman Catholic Steve Bannon, confirming, yes, Project 2025 is indeed the plan after the quote-unquote election was decided. There are two from Al Smith's dinner. Notice Donald J. Trump's nudge to Archbishop Dolan. It's not Nolan, you put Nolan, but it's Dolan. After the Project 2025 joke. The last should be Donald J. Trump on Rogan, Roman Catholic Rogan. He says that he is going to release the JFK files immediately upon swearing in, and that there is, quote, "nothing of significance," unquote, on them. Hopefully you will have access to the attachments I've sent. I'm using my phone and don't have access to the computer right now. So if anybody wants a copy of this email, just have them, you can email me at rbpbchurch@comcast.net and ask a copy for this email, and I will send it to you. There's also videos, 3 videos, 4 videos attached. So I find that intriguing. This is exactly what you and I have said, George, that Trump is going to be given all executive power. This is the Jesuit endgame for martial law. And that's why everything Biden did fed this. Biden was the greatest help to this end that Trump could ever have. So I find it a very interesting email, and the videos ought to be equally interesting. So with that little announcement, please take it away, Brother George Widger.
Okay, I would like to address your email. However, before I do that, do you mind if I do my scripture reading first?
Oh, that's fine. Please do.
Okay, this is from James 4, verse 4. James 4:4. Which says, "Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore is a friend of the world is the enemy of God." Okay, there are a number of applications I can make. Well, first, I need to address something. And I know this may sound pedantic, picayune, or whatever word you want to say. Nitpicky. Is people need to differentiate between acquaintance and friend. Now, the passage does not mention the word acquaintance. Now, acquaintance is somebody whom we know through work, through church, perhaps schooling, or a next door neighbor, and you're friendly and you're cordial with this person. A friend is somebody whom you hang out with because you want to. You may start out as acquaintances at work, but you go out for coffee, you go out for lunch, you hang out, you might go hunting or something like that. Now, so I'm not saying, so the vast majority of the people whom we come into contact with are not Christians. So that doesn't mean we're supposed to shun them and hate them and say, hey, I'm not going to hang out with you because you're a wicked sinner. Or I'm not going to be polite or friendly with you because you have different beliefs from me. So I just want to make that clarification. Now, I can think of at least a couple of applications of this. Is Billy Graham, the evangelist. I know that he had at least one papal audience, one of which was with John Paul II, whom they now call, quote, John Paul II, unclose quote. And there's also, was it Norm Guy? Was it? No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Norman Geisler. It is Walter Martin who wrote the book back in the 1960s called Kingdom of the Cults. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And
Okay.
Alberto Rivera was very clever to say that Walter Martin was a Jesuit coadjutor because the chief cult of all is Roman Catholicism, and Walter Martin didn't put a word in there against the papacy.
Well, okay, case in point. During the 1980s, Martin was on the John Engelberg show. And they're talking, I don't have the date, but this is during the 1980s. So Engelbert had Walter Martin on there to talk about the so-called Protestant view of justification. We're saved by faith alone through grace alone, sola fide. And so to argue the Catholic perspective, they not only had a Catholic priest on, but they had a Jesuit, Father Mitchell Pacwa, S.J. And so Pacwa presented the Catholic position on justification and how we're saved. Well, okay, you could say they could rationalize that little interaction because, well, they're having a debate or a discussion or whatever you want to call it. But I guess by Martin's own admission, he actually became friends with Pacwa as they would socialize, they would hang out. And as a matter of fact, Pacwa was actually at Martin's funeral. No, he did not.
Wow. Intriguing, George. Very good.
Okay, so now, as I said, I'd like to address your email. And so you said one of your listeners saying was drawing the parallels between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. So just for clarification, and I know we've discussed this before, Adolf Hitler was elected in 1932 as the Chancellor of Germany, which was the same year Franklin Roosevelt was elected President of the United States. As a matter of fact, their terms were almost identical. They ruled from 1933 to 1945.
And also in 1932, that's when Hitler was given German citizenship because he was an Austrian. And he could have never become chancellor had he not been given the citizenship in 32.
Now, well, okay, so, and I just read, it was that the other day, Donald Trump was named the person of the year, not the man of the year, the person of the year, which is the third time that has actually happened. One other time happened in 2016, and I don't recall when the other time was. And yes, I know I should know this. But for what it's worth, Hitler actually only garnered that distinction once. And of course, the question is, who started
I think what we need to concentrate on here is the way the Jesuits made Hitler the absolute dictator in Germany is the way they're going to make Trump the absolute dictator here. It's the same way. But go ahead.
Okay, so for what it's worth, I just found this out yesterday or the other day, that Henry Luce launched Time magazine in 1927. So you're talking 97 years ago, almost a century ago. And just about every dictator that has existed since then has been on the cover. Adolf Hitler.
Indeed, that's right. And Henry Luce, I don't know at the time, but was that Time magazine you mentioned?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, Henry Luce most assuredly was the head of it in the Kennedy assassination, but I'm not sure when he was the head of it, maybe then, as you said, but he was a Knight of Malta and subject to the Archbishop of New York City. And he was also very much involved with Rockefeller Center. That's not far from the Archbishop's cathedral there in New York City, St. Patrick's.
Well, for what it's worth, his wife, Claire Booth Luce, was also a Dame of Malta, but she also, so when they make a man a knight, they knight him. She was actually knighted before he was, because she was a lifelong Roman Catholic, and he was a.
Well, I think she was raised a Baptist, George, and she left the Baptist church and became Catholic. Yeah.
Oh, I beg pardon. Thank you for that clarification. But yeah, so they always like controlling their media moguls.
Right. William, just go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
William Randolph Hearst was a Knight of Malta, as is Ted Kennedy. I'm sorry, Ted Turner. Well, yes, Ted Kennedy was a Knight of Malta, but as is Ted Turner.
So Ted Turner and William Randolph Hearst and Henry Robinson Luce were all Knights of Malta, right?
Well, specifically, Ted Turner is a Knight of St. John of Jerusalem.
Well, that's Knight of Hospitallers, but that's Knight of Malta too.
Now, the interesting. Now, you mentioned Claire Booth Luce. You said she grew up Baptist.
Yes,
as did Ted Turner.
Is that right? As did Ted Turner. Well, that just shows you. Well, and there's another one. Thaddeus Stevens was raised by a Baptist, and he became Catholic on his deathbed when the black nuns baptized him into the Catholic Church after he had served the papacy and shoved the 14th Amendment down the throats of the people. So he was a real evil man, raised Baptist, serving the papacy, dies a Catholic on his deathbed.
Well, and of course, now Bill Clinton wasn't raised Baptist, but he attended a Baptist church in Little Rock.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the choir, so he was probably interested in some girl. He said, "Oh, maybe I should join this congregation." But anyhow, I know we've talked about Bill Clinton several times. So in addition to getting his undergrad degree from Georgetown University, he also went to St. John's Catholic School in Little Rock for 6 years. So he received Catholic education for 10 years of his life.
Wow, that's huge. That's just huge. And of course, he said his favorite teacher at Georgetown was the author of Tragedy and Hope, Carol Quigley. And I found out that Carol Quigley gave one of the heads of Georgetown, Edmund Walsh, Edmund Walsh gave him a loan of $1,500 to buy a house. So this is the connection of the Jesuit Walsh to Carol Quigley, writer of Tragedy and Hope. And Carol Quigley was the favorite professor of Bill Clinton.
Well, they taught him well. And, I've shared this with you before, but back in 2019, Georgetown University, a School of Foreign Education, actually did a video to commemorate the 100th.
Is that School of Foreign Service?
Yes, the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign
Service. That's right.
It was established in 1919, so just over 100 years ago. Well, in 2019, to establish the 100 or to commemorate the 100th anniversary of his founding, they brought back all the alumni to make a speech, and one of whom was Bill Clinton. And he said point blank, if I had not gone to the school, I would never have become president.
Yeah, very good. That's an honest statement. And as I mentioned previously, when I went to Georgetown wanting to get a picture of Bill Clinton kneeling at the grave of Timothy Healy with Jesuit President Leo J. O'Donovan standing behind him, the black secretary would not let me take a picture of that and essentially ran me out of the office. So they didn't want to have that picture of Bill Clinton kneeling at the grave of Timothy Healy, the late president of Georgetown, who himself was a mulatto. Go ahead, George. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so something, all right, getting back to your email. Now, this may sound tangential, and something you and I have discussed over the last week or so is the acquittal, I guess, of Dan Penny. And for those who don't know, Daniel Penny, I guess, is a 30-year-old former Marine who back last year on May the 1st was riding the subway in New York City. Now, he's white and, as I said, a former Marine. And he was being harassed by a young black man named Jordan Neely, who was 24 years old. Now, Neely had a long history, I guess, drug abuse, psychological problems, and accosting people in the public on the subway in the street.
He was a savage black. That's what he was. He was not a black man. He's civil black. He was a savage black that have one of the biggest contributors to the destruction of New York City and why lots of white people don't want to go there. Full of black savagery. So this is a guy that's a black savage and being rude and disrespectful and condescending and asking money as they typically do. Go ahead, George.
Well, so I guess Mr. Penny was having no part of it. And he said, listen, here, just leave me alone. I just want to ride the train, get to my stop. But he said, wait a minute, can you give me some money? And there's conflicting accounts as to what happened next because the cameras weren't operating. Yes, that's what I said. The cameras were not operating. And Penny said, listen, if you don't leave it alone, I'm going to take care of business. I'm sure you used some more colorful language. So Penny apparently put.
Wait a second, George. You said the cameras were not operating?
Correct.
Well, how did that happen? I think
Well,
there's a picture that I saw of him having that guy in a chokehold. I mean, was that just a picture of a phone of some sort? But that wasn't any.
yes, it was.
Okay.
It was one of the passengers, and I know people who live in New York who were in law enforcement, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's one of the complaints about these new trains is the cameras are defective. They're often not operational."
Well, if the majority of savage blacks know that, they can do anything they want. That's great. That encourages crime to justify the establishment of the new white right.
Okay, so Mr. Petty decided to put Mr. Neely into a chokehold. Now, as I said, there's conflicting accounts as to what happened next. According to the state of New York, he actually put too much force on Neely's neck, and he choked him out. Others say he actually died. Neely died of a fentanyl overdose. And so
it was on fentanyl at the time?
Yes. So
did that come out in the trial?
Well, yes, but they said for some reason the toxicology results weren't admitted from. Now I don't know. The whole thing is bizarre. So anyhow, earlier this week on Monday, Penny was acquitted. He was charged, I believe, with attempted murder and aggravated assault.
Yeah, by a black prosecutor. Was the prosecutor black? Of course. So now we're going to play the race card, and we're going to weaponize the law against white people with these black prosecutors. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So just out of curiosity, I decided to wonder, well, who runs the subway in New York? Well, that's under the auspices of MTA, Municipal Transit Authority, or Metropolitan Transit Authority, MTA. So they run the subways, they run the ferries, they run the buses in New York City. And I'm not going to mention all the names, but the acting director of MTA is Rachel Cohen.
Now, I believe you want to remember this, that the large transportation infrastructure in New York City was financed and built by Nicholas Brady. Nicholas Brady was wealthier than Rockefeller. Nicholas Brady was a Knight of Malta. Nicholas Brady was a head of over 100 corporations. His wife was Genevieve Brady, who gave several millions to the building of the Jesuit novitiate over here in Warnersville, Pennsylvania. So the Knights of Malta control the transportation of New York City. And so they happened to put a Jew at the head of it for a purpose. Go ahead, George.
Okay, so she's the acting director of the MTA. Now, the chief legal officer is John McCarthy.
Sounds like an Irish Catholic. I don't know.
Yes, got both his undergrad and his law degrees from Fordham.
Jesuit Fordham. Okay, so you see the Jesuit hand in this, McCarthy, is that what you said his name was?
Correct.
A graduate from Fordham. And a graduate from Fordham is an agent for the Jesuit order, just like Donald J. Trump, graduate from Fordham, or at least attended 2 years, agent of the Jesuit order. It's like G. Gordon Liddy, graduate of Fordham University, agent of the Jesuit order, and fulfilled his part in the Kennedy assassination by shooting Officer Tippit in Dallas. But go ahead, George.
Okay, so they have this Jewish lady. Okay, so this is something I've said before, and I probably should come up with a new punchline. Well, they definitely. So why do they put these Jewish people in places of prominence, such as the acting director of the MTA? Well, they need people who are competent, who know how to do their job.
Yeah, and they're very smart. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to have these operations going on in your subway, you need to have the right people in place.
Yeah. And when you're going to blame them, there's the option now to blame the Jew. Because after all, she's in charge, so it's got to be the Jews.
Yes, indeed. Well, there's speaking of a similar situation, there's a congressman, a U.S. congressman from New York City, Daniel Goldman. Well, his whole name is Daniel Sachs Goldman. So he's related to the Goldman Sachs family, but he's also related to the Haas and the Levi Strauss family. Mm-hmm. And Levi Strauss, they're the people who invented the blue jeans, Levi's. So they're an old money California Jewish family. So Dan was actually born in San Francisco, but he decided to move to New York. So Congressman Goldman has come up with a proposal saying that there should be a resolution saying that Donald Trump cannot run for re-election in 2028, which is jumping the gun somewhat since he hasn't even been sworn in as the 47th president.
Well, that sounds ridiculous because a president can only have 2 terms. Mm-hmm. And they either successive or one and then the other. So he can't run for president in 2028 anyway.
Well, who knows? Maybe
maybe what this guy said is true. After you vote for me, you won't have to vote anymore. Maybe there's not going to be a presidential election. Maybe we'll go right to a dictatorship of martial law, and they'll have plenty of war to preoccupy the people, and he'll just stay in office until the Jesuits accomplish what they want to accomplish.
Okay, so I mentioned Dan Goldman, but somebody who most people are not familiar with was his late brother, Bill Goldman, or William Goldman. Now, Bill was a history professor at University of San Francisco, which is Jesuit in San Francisco. And I didn't know this until maybe a couple weeks ago, because this happened almost literally in my backyard. I mean, less than 20 miles from where I live. Well, Bill was killed in a plane crash in Sonoma, California, back in 2017 at the age of 38. He was in a Piper Cub or something like that. And I don't remember hearing about that, 7 years ago. And it could have been a legitimate accident. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, you wonder what he was doing. If it was a murder, there had to be something that he was doing or advocating that would result in that, like the deliberate shooting down of Paul Wellstone and his family when they were against the war in Iraq. Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. There is something I need to attend to, right?
Okay. Well, how long is it going to take you, George?
60 seconds.
Okay. Well, then I'll talk, and then you take care of what you need to do, and just mute your microphone. Okay. Can you do that? Mute your mic. Okay, we have George Widger with us today on December 14th, 2024, and we're talking about a host of different topics. But as I mentioned previously, I do not believe that any agitation would erupt in any of the major cities until the inauguration of that Jesuit tool of making over the years, Donald J. Trump. And so Heritage Foundation is completely in the hands of the Jesuits. In fact, the founder of Heritage Foundation was Frank Shakespeare, who was also the head of CBS, and he was a Knight of Malta. So Heritage Foundation will always be right-wing, Catholic right-wing, run by the Knights, and working with those that would seek to bring a right-wing executive dictatorship to fruition. And so it's all in place. The Jesuits have been working on this for really since the 1930s, when FDR was made a temporary dictator, with the Emergency Banking Relief Act, Proclamations 2039 of March 6, 1933, Proclamation 2040 of March 9, 1933, Emergency Banking Relief Act declared to be passed on March 9, 1933, bringing Trading with the Enemy Act inside the country, all the people in the United States becoming enemy belligerents living in their states deemed occupied territories, all the property of the American people now became enemy property for the use of the military government and its commander-in-chief, regardless of the party that he's a member of, and he being subject to the papal nuncio in Washington from his papal nuncio residence, subject to the Pope of Rome, and telling the commander-in-chief what he's going to do. So that's the American Holy Roman 14th Amendment Socialist Communist American Empire as of today, and as it's been existing under military government since March 9th, 1933. We have not had constitutional government for 91 years. Hopefully we could reverse this, although I don't think so, because it looks like they're on their way to have what they want for all these years, an absolutist military dictator, for which reason the resolution of this is for people on a state level or on a county level to declare their independence, not to advocate secession. That's not permissible under a Supreme Court case titled Texas versus White of 1869, but it's absolutely appropriate for Bible-believing Protestants and Baptists who are Calvinistic to have a declaration of independence. So that's my remedy for the present matter. Are you with us, George, yet?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry about the little.
It's okay, no sweat. Just go ahead. You took care of it.
Okay. Well, thank you for filling in for me. You did a yeoman's job.
Thank you, sir. Oh, by the way, I just watched Candace Owens on one of her podcasts, and she was interviewing a survivor of the USS Liberty. A very dear guy, he's 78 years old. His name is Philip Turney, and I learned of him through this tremendous 4-volume DVD set titled Sacrificing Liberty, which I strongly recommend the listener get that and watch those DVDs. But in the final analysis, they blame Israel. They blame Israel for the attack on USS Liberty, which Israel, the government of Israel, attacked the USS Liberty. They absolutely intended to sink it, no doubt about it. But who was really behind it? Who gave the order? Well, the one who gives the order is LBJ, in charge of Richard Helms, and Richard Helms gave the approval to Rafi Eitan, who was the head of Israeli intelligence, and then he gives the order to attack the USS Liberty. It's the same Rafi Eitan that betrayed Jonathan Pollard and got Pollard in jail for, 30 years. Rafi Eitan, working for the Pope, Lyndon Baines Johnson, co-conspirator in the assassination of JFK, all working for the Pope. But who in 1967 really ran it? It was Francis Cardinal Spellman. Spellman is responsible for the attack on the USS Liberty. And the Israeli government, subject to the Pope, just like this government in Washington, D.C., carried it out under the wishes of Spellman and the Pope of Rome. And as I said in my post, I posted this up on Candace Owens' website there, and I kind of went into this explanation. And I haven't received anything back for her, not even a comment to it. So I said that I simply can prove that Francis Cardinal Spellman was behind the attack on the USS Liberty, would be happy to come onto her program or talk to Philip Turney or anybody else that's advocating blame Israel for it. Israel's not the culprit. The people of Israel are not the culprit. The government of Israel is a co-conspirator in it, but the one in power is the Pope of Rome over LBJ at the time, controlled by Francis Cardinal Spellman, who helped to put him in office after Spellman oversaw the assassination of Kennedy. That's the truth. But go ahead, George.
Okay, so for what it's worth, the Prime Minister of Israel at the time was Levi Eshkol. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find anything suspicious about him. And yes, I did watch the video with Philip and I guess Candace Owens. And, well, of course...
Did you see my post? Did you see my post up there? Well, check and see it again. I saw the post when I went to it earlier today, but some of the other people said it's gone. So anyway, just check that for me if you would when you get a chance.
Okay, we'll do. So with somebody like Candace Owens or Joe Rogan, they are what is called, or Tucker Carlson, they're what is called a limited hangout, meaning they've been cleared. People like Owens or Rogan have been cleared to release some truth after the fact, years or decades later. Yes, the Liberty did happen. It wasn't Israel. Okay, up front, Israel was it was the Israeli Defense Forces that actually
Right.
attacked.
That's right. And they wanted to sink the ship. They were told to sink the ship. LBJ said, I want that GD ship at the bottom of the ocean. Because the design was to sink the ship, blame the Egyptians, then the Americans could attack Egypt and further secure the Pope's revived Latin kingdom of Jerusalem, which we acknowledge the Jews' right to their land. It's Israel, but in the eyes of the Pope, it's the revived Latin kingdom of Jerusalem since 1948. And also in that sacrificing liberty, there was a Russian sub-general or admiral that said, if that would have happened, we would have had to launch missiles off our subs that were conventional, and they would have blown up the Dome of the Rock and the Alaska Mosque. So that was the design. Jesuits running the Russian government, Soviet government, Jesuit running the American government, the Israeli government, the Egyptian government, all work in tandem, subject to the Jesuits, their intelligence community. And this is the time that the dead Jesuits missed out on destroying the Dome of the Rock and the Alaska Mosque when the USS Liberty did not sink. Go ahead, George.
Okay, so, well, the whole story of the USS Liberty has been written out of the history books. Very few people are familiar with it. Now, I heard about it back during the 1990s. And somebody said, oh, yes, George, are you familiar with the Liberty? I'm sorry, no, I'm not. Oh, yeah, the Israelis attacked it. Really? When did that attack place? Oh, June of 1967. Really? So this is long before I'd heard of you or Vatican assassins or anything like that. And it always, struck me as odd. Why would they do that? I mean, after all, the United States is Israel's biggest benefactor.
Yeah.
And
by the way, this is another proof that the government of Israel is the enemy of the Jews living in Israel. Another proof of it. Not to mention Land for Peace. That shows they're an enemy of the people of Israel. Not to mention the whole Gaza fiasco when the military stood down for 7 hours and let those Muslim savages kill, maim, and murder over 1,200 Jewish people there. The government of Israel is not the friend of the people of Israel because it's working for the papacy. So go ahead.
Well, that reminds me of, I know we've talked about Barbarossa before, back in June of 1941, June the 22nd. And in the days before the German attack into, well, wasn't Russia, but it was Belarus, then into Russia and various other countries, most of Stalin's advisors were saying, hey, Joe, the Germans are going to attack us. Should we scramble?
We've got 3 million Germans on the front. They have 3,000 tanks. It's going to be the largest land invasion in world history. They're going to attack us. Koba, that was his name, Koba. They called him that. And what he did to them, he killed them. Any spies that came and reported this, he had them executed because Stalin and Hitler worked together for the invasion, the successful invasion of Mother Russia. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, okay, so that has been a standard technique for the Jesuits and for their Coadjutors for centuries. Mm-hmm. Doing things that are, say, unless you're read it and seem completely insane and inscrutable. So if you want somebody to invade your country and inflict as much damage as possible, you act the same way that Zhukas Willy did, i.e. Joseph Stalin. Now, and
they gave them hundreds of thousands of tons of grain and fuel for the invading German army. That's what Stalin did. They were running all that up to the border, unloaded by the German troops till the day before the invasion. And that's out of Military Intelligence Blunders. Very good book. But go ahead.
Okay. So, but speaking of right now, I have a follow-up to the whole Daniel Penny situation. I guess Daniel Penny is hanging out with J.D. Vance because they're going to the Army-Navy football game this weekend. And I guess he's schmoozing with Vance. Who knows? maybe Penny will get a job in the Trump administration.
Who is this Penny?
Daniel Penny, the fellow who choked out that black thug.
Oh, okay. All right. So what's he doing now?
He's schmoozing with J.D. Vance. He went to, I guess today, he went to the Army Navy football game in Annapolis or West Point. Well, the Army is at West Point, and the Navy is at Annapolis. Wherever they had their game.
Mm-hmm.
So
he was found not guilty, and I'm glad there was a trial so all the facts could truly come out. But still, it's about the new right. And here's Penny, and he's not putting up with any abuse from these savage blacks, and that's going to inspire all kinds of other white men to do the exact same thing and fight this black savagery that's been going on in this country in New York for 60 or 70 years. That's all about the snapback of the whites, and it's going to be facilitated by the new right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I thought they might have convicted him, not because he was guilty, because that's immaterial. They
would have convicted
him because, well, he's white.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's how it normally is. Yeah, that's how it normally is.
Okay.
And white man bad, black man good. White man bad, black man good. That's the whole shibboleth of the Jesuits in control of the judiciary and the press and academia. Every day.
Okay. Well, not only that, but something I mentioned is that Dan Penny, is a former Marine.
Now, I want to help you there, too. I had a friend years ago who was a Marine, and I said, well, I know you're a former Marine. He says, there's no such thing as a former Marine. Once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. I said, okay, pardon me. So just for the information there, George.
Okay, well, he's a Marine who's not in active service. So
okay.
Okay, because it seems as if since at least the 1960s, there has been a concerted effort to demonize veterans. If they're serving, they're expendable, but politicians like using vets as election props, saying they want to use them to get into office and to stay in office. Oh, I support our troops. Wear a yellow ribbon. But when it comes to actually helping them, no, we don't care. Also, we need to demonize and vilify them. They're crazy. Especially the Marines. They're trained to how to kill people. So we
of course, it's what they're supposed to do.
Okay, but rather than using them to kill the Pope's enemies, they could turn against the machine. So that makes them a threat.
That's right. That makes every Marine that's been trained in the military service, if he ever wakes up to realize how he's been used by this emergency war powers military government run by the Pope and the Jesuits and the nuncio in D.C., that they would be most assuredly a threat to these conspirators.
Okay.
In fact, I have someone that I know of that was in the SEALs, and he told me that the SEALs are thinking now, well, maybe we're the problem. We're invading all these countries. And the question is, who are we invading for? It's obviously not for the American people. And if any of these trained Delta Force SEAL guys would ever wake up to the fact how they've been used by the papacy and the military government here, I believe there's a lot of them that would just start to go and gather their weapons and their abilities and start taking care of business, even though it might kill them or might be killed in the process. And the Jesuits have to watch this. But go ahead.
Well, all right. So, as I said, they've been doing this since at least the 1960s, probably the 1950s, with Oswald, Charles Joseph Whitman, Leonard Lake, Charles Ng, and a whole bunch of other people. And I mentioned specifically Marines, but they've used other people in other services, like was it Dennis Rader, the so-called BTK killer in Kansas? He was Air Force. And so they'll use anybody, and of course, Timothy McVeigh, he was in the Army. So the term they actually use is called sheep dipping.
Yeah, sheep dipping.
Where they'll take somebody who's...
George, you're kind of cutting in and cutting out. So just kind of speak a little slower, finish your word and sentence, okay? Because it sounds like you're cutting out. But go ahead.
Okay. So the term that they use for that is sheep dipping. And I believe we have discussed this before. is where they take somebody who is in the service and they'll use them for some other operation, civilian operation afterwards. It could be as an assassin or a patsy or drug runner or whatever, but more often than not, it's something a little bit more innocuous, benign, such as a comedian, such as George Carlin, Dick Gregory, Richard Pryor, anybody. They'll use somebody to serve their agenda because they like using veterans because, well, they've been trained. They know how to follow orders. They know how to wear a uniform. They know how to recognize a chain of command in a hierarchy.
That's
And
right.
they know discipline, and they know that there are consequences for not obeying orders. So
That's right.
I
know
bring
one.
that up.
I
So,
know one of them. He was a sharpshooter in Korea, and then he was made an assassin for the CIA. He makes custom rifles. He takes his deer at 2,500 yards. Yeah, I know him. Army first, then CIA assassin next. And he also told me that he trained Gambino Mafia assassins long-range shooting for the CIA.
well, yes, I believe you had mentioned him before.
I
Now,
did.
something I wanted to bring up in terms. Well, yes, I think we've talked about him off air before. I'm not sure if we've talked about him on a stream.
Mm.
And something I wanted to mention is, in terms of current events, is have you been following this whole situation with this United Healthcare assassination of Brian Thompson?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so first we're assuming that he's actually dead. So I guess earlier this month on the 4th, Brian Thompson was at a meeting in New York City for their shareholders, and he was gunned down the street. And they say his alleged assassin is Luigi Mangione.
Oh, Italian Catholic. Italian Catholic then?
Correct. Correct.
Anybody with
From
Luigi
Baltimore.
is an Italian
Now,
Catholic. Yeah, go ahead.
See. And the story is completely bizarre. It doesn't make any sense if you look at the actual cover story. So Thompson was, I said, was in New York City at a meeting, and about 6:45 in the morning, he was gunned down by a hooded killer on a bicycle. And so this killer, I guess, fled away to a couple blocks into a Starbucks to get a water. Then he was able to cover something like 30 blocks in 15 minutes on a bicycle. So he had to be a world-class bicyclist to do this. And then he got out of New York City and on a Greyhound bus heading to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But then he headed back east to Altoona, Pennsylvania, where he was arrested, I guess, last week at a McDonald's. So you said you're only vaguely familiar with this story. Does that make any sense to you whatsoever?
Not at all. It sounds like a CIA hit. Sounds like something that they would pull, and I just wonder why they would do that to this insurance head. I heard rumors that the guy that shot him had a bad surgery and had an insurance issue, and some cover story like that. I don't know what the truth is, but to make that kind of travel from New York to Pittsburgh to Altoona, this is more than meets the eye.
Okay, so for what it's worth, Altoona is in Blair County, Pennsylvania. And Altoona has a population of about 45,000 people, thereabouts, 44,000. And the mayor of Altoona is Matt Pacifico.
And Altoona is a very Roman Catholic city. Very Roman Catholic. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Mayor Pacifico went to St. Francis College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, the alleged killer went initially to a Starbucks in New York City.
So, George, take your time. George, just take your time. You're cutting out again. Speak slowly, would you please?
Yes. Okay. So the alleged killer, after he shot Thompson, ended up going to a Starbucks shortly thereafter to get some water. He didn't get a coffee or anything like that. So he was seen on camera. And so shortly thereafter, after he'd gone across town to the local Greyhound station. He bought a one-way ticket to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Once he got to Pittsburgh, he headed east 150 miles to Altoona, where he was arrested at McDonald's. So this whole story does not make any sense whatsoever.
No, it doesn't.
It ranks up there with. So now
maybe he's just another patsy. Maybe he's a patsy, and there's another shooter, and this guy was told to go here and go there, just like Oswald was a patsy. I mean, all of this is possible.
Okay.
Hey, George.
So Luigi is actually from a fairly well-to-do family. As a matter of fact, they have the Mangione Aquatic Center at Loyola, Baltimore. That's named after his family. So the Mangiones are big donors.
Loyola, Baltimore. Okay. That's Loyola University in Baltimore. One of the four Loyola universities. One in Baltimore, one in New Orleans, one in Chicago, one in Los Angeles.
Correct. So the Mangiones have been donors to Loyola, Baltimore for decades. They have donated millions of dollars to that school. Now, I'm not sure why they targeted Thompson or whoever actually killed him, or if he is dead, because he's only like maybe the number 5, maybe number 6 man in the whole organization, because there are people who are higher up than he is. Probably the head of United Healthcare Group is Sir Andrew Whitty. He's British, and he's also
so he's got to be a knight. If he serves, he's got a knighthood.
Yes, he does. So Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth II, knighted him just prior to her death. And
that Dame of Malta. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That Dame of Malta and whore for the Pope of Rome. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Now, the number 2 man in the organization is Steve Hemsley, and he got his undergrad degree from Fordham University.
Oh. So United Healthcare is really essentially run by the Jesuit graduate from Fordham. And the knight, Sir So-and-so, is just merely the figurehead being the head of it. Okay, I see.
Okay, so are you saying something just doesn't smell right about this story?
Well, no, you got a Jesuit hand in it. And so you got to figure it out, what happened, what this guy did, what he wouldn't do maybe. Maybe he wasn't going to go along with the policy of the Jesuit Fordham grad that was going to do something. And so we're just going to eliminate you. Maybe he was going to expose something. Who knows? That's what the police and investigators are for. That's why they're given jurisdiction to investigate, to find these things out if they'll be honest about it. But go ahead.
Well, so speaking of jurisdiction, so right now, Mangione is in the Blair County Jail in Pennsylvania. And he's been assigned the public defender for Blair County is Thomas Dickey. And Dickey also went to St. Francis College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. So they both went to St. Francis College in Latrobe. Is that what you're saying, George?
Correct. But also, Dickey went to Archbishop Guilfoyle High School in also there in Pennsylvania, Altoona, Pennsylvania. So the public defender went to 2 different Catholic institutions.
Has the case been assigned a judge yet?
Only for the preliminary hearing.
I see. Oftentimes, they change the judge. The trial judge oftentimes the trial judge is not the same judge for the preliminary hearing. Actually, arraignment. So it's an arraignment where they establish personal jurisdiction over the guy. So I would be interested to see who the judge was at arraignment, if they've arraigned him yet.
Okay, so the next issue is they would have to extradite him back to New York State, which is where the crime was supposed to have taken place.
Yeah, okay. And that makes sense.
But from what I understand, okay, so Mangione, as I understand, at the behest of his lawyer, is fighting extradition. I'm not sure what his grounds would be. Do you have any guesses?
I wonder who his attorney is. We know him. We know the one who is. Oh, you just mentioned his attorney, right? They both graduated from the same school. Okay.
Yes. So as I said, so the attorney is Thomas Dickey. So as I said, he went to St. Francis College for his undergrad degree, and he also went to Archbishop Guilfoyle High School in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
You got some breakup there, George. So okay, well, it'd be interesting to see if they're going to they got to extradite him. They got to send him back to New York, and it's be interested who's going to prosecute him, and it's going to be interesting who the judge is. But go ahead.
Okay, so this is all right. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not saying I believe in divination. I think they're going to find him guilty, regardless of whether he did it or not.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. That'll put an end to any further investigation and seal it. Yep. They're going to use him as a fall guy. And he's probably already agreed to it.
Okay, or he could possibly become depressed and shoot himself in the back of the head.
Correct. That's right. That would get rid of all the evidence in. Once he's gone, there's no evidence. Unless there's some witnesses that actually saw something different. And when those witnesses come forth, they are risking their very lives, as the 100 witnesses that were killed involved in the Kennedy assassination. When they came forth with their information, they were killed. So the Jesuits have a very efficient way of eliminating witnesses that might throw a monkey wrench into their design of who they've decided to kill with the strangulation cord, the bullet, the steel of the poignard, or the poison cup. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So anyhow, so just want to mention a couple other current events. Did you hear about what happened to Nancy Pelosi? Was it yesterday?
Yes, I did. Doesn't the Pope pardon her for something? Something with regard to the Pope and her?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I think that'd be more on the purview of Joe Biden. Well, actually, she was part of an entourage over in Luxembourg to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes Forest, better known as the Battle of the Bulge. Mm-hmm. And I guess she was in a castle. She fell and injured herself. And I don't mean to make light of the situation. I mean, I just wondering, gee, that seems like an odd thing to commemorate. You're talking about an event that took place roughly 80 years ago.
Yep, that's
and
right.
She was all of 4 years old when it took place. And I'd imagine most people have long since forgotten about this conflict. I know we've talked about.
Was she celebrating Patton's victory, or was she just celebrating the battle of the Battle of Bastogne there? I mean, what was she really doing? Of course, she's a Dame of Malta. She could have been meeting with some of her sister dames, or first with some other knights. Who knows?
Okay, so that was the official cover story as to why she was over there. So she hasn't been harmed. I mean, she didn't do any serious damage, but she's a little bit long in the tooth. She's 84 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, she's managed to stay alive. Mm-hmm.
So, what do they call that drug, that chemical that's in babies' blood? Adrenochrome?
Adrenochrome? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I guess she probably needs to drink more of that.
It wouldn't surprise me. They have such high technology to preserve their wicked long lives that it's just unbelievable. They drink some elixir, probably unknown to us, to further their lives, like Kissinger, Pelosi, lots of those people.
Well, do you mind if I mention something on a completely trivial note that has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking? Well, not much to do with what we're talking about. We discussed.
What are we talking about, George? What are we talking about? Anything specific? Because it seems to me we're just kind of dancing around different topics, which is fine. But go ahead.
Well, we've been doing that for what, 5-6 years?
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, there was a show that was in the back in the
Take your time.
1960s
You're
called
cutting out again. You're cutting out again. Just take your time. Finish your sentence. Complete your word. Okay.
All right. So there was a show that we've discussed before called Combat. It ran on ABC television from 1962 to 1967. The two main stars of it were Vic Morrow and Rick Jason. So do you recall, did you ever watch that back then?
Of course, I loved Combat. I love Vic Morrow. I love to watch that program. Didn't miss hardly any of them.
Yes. Now I wasn't alive when it was on, but I remember watching it in reruns. But I decided to order the box set on DVD, just for intelligence purposes. And there's an episode that aired in 1966 called Mockingbird. And there's a reason why I bring this up. And it's people say it wasn't particularly a good episode for a number of reasons. And in this episode, you have an actor, Jeremy Strait, I believe that was his name, or Jeremy Slate, who was a German officer who's posing as an American officer, a fighter pilot who gets shot down, so that he could infiltrate the French resistance. So you catch the premise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a number of things go awry, and he ends up, rather than getting picked up by the French resistance, he ends up being picked up by Hanley and his men, a squad. And so this German officer gets involved with all sorts of machinations where he ends up killing a number of Americans. So I bring this up because the bulk of the action of the episode takes place in a French monastery that's run by religious brothers. And it turns out the author
who are depicted as the good guys, right?
Yes.
And the priests in there are the good guys.
Well, they're the good guys. They help. They treat the wounded, Americans as well as Germans. Yeah. And it turns out the author of the script was Thomas Conway, S.J.
So you got a Jesuit who's the author of this particular episode of Combat.
Correct. Yes. Okay. So I didn't know.
Go ahead, George.
They're actually so the German is portrayed as being really nasty and very unscrupulous. I mean, it goes above and beyond the call of duty to be cruel.
Yeah. We got to demonize the Germans, just like we demonize the white men of the South. Yeah, go ahead. Everything they do is evil, cruel, and wicked. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just thought I'd share that little factoid with you.
Sure, that's good old Jesuit Hollywood. Carrying out their vindictive vengeance on the historic white German people for the Reformation. That's why. And we'll demonize them all. But go ahead.
Okay, so I thought I should share this since this is apropos. Today is December the 14th, or at least it is here, still in North America. And it was on this date 4 years ago, it came out in the U.S.
Really? Was that 4 years ago, George?
Yes, December the 14th, 2020.
Where are we? Also, where's my life going? But go ahead, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, indeed. Well, and I also need to mention something that actually took place before you were even born. It was on this date.
That's a long time ago, George. Go ahead.
So it was on this date in 1799, so 225 years ago, George Washington died.
Mm-hmm. He did 1798 or 1799. I think it was 1799, George.
Well, I believe I said, okay, you're right, 1799. So 225 years ago, George Washington died. So as I said, that was before.
Yeah, George Washington was poisoned and bled to death. But go ahead. Our first murdered president. But go ahead, George.
And not the last.
There's been 14 of them.
At least.
Mm-hmm. At least, yep. 14 that I can prove, but go ahead.
So I just thought I'd share that little factoid with you. So I was just wondering, so the shot became available in the U.S. on this date 4 years ago. So what is everybody worried about? Why is it that people still continue to get sick? Wasn't that supposed to cure everything?
Why, of course, George. Didn't you believe it's safe and effective? Jesuit Fauci said it was safe and effective. It's got to be good enough for us, right? Good enough for Trump. Good enough for Biden. Yeah, safe and effective.
Well, here's another factoid. This is something somebody sent me last week. This has to do with Santa Clara County, which is just, well, you know where that is. But for the listeners, that is just south of San Francisco. That's where San Jose is. Well, according to Steve,
and the Jesuits run the county, and they have their Santa Clara University there.
Yes. Well, since January of 2021, so almost 4 years ago, there has been a 50% increase in death from all causes in Santa Clara County in the last 4 years. Now, why that is, I have no idea whatsoever.
Well, what are they dying from?
I don't know, white supremacy, climate change.
There you go, white racism and bigotry. That's probably what's doing it, George.
And maybe climate change.
Yeah, there you go. Blame climate change for that one too. You know, who knows what they're doing? But when you have a 50% height raising in deaths in Santa Clara, you wonder what it is. Maybe it's chem spraying or the poison in the water or whatever. But they're conducting their experiments across the country and killing down the population as much as they can to reduce it to the North American Union, where we can be overrun with the blacks out of Africa, the majority savage blacks, the Hispanics, and everybody else they can bring in here to neutralize any white people that would put up any kind of resistance. So they're going to be killing white populations, primarily, white areas. Go ahead. That's why they brought in those Haitians, the black Haitians, into a white area in Pennsylvania. All those whites are going to be moving out. One lady said, this place is finished. But that's what the Jesuits want, the destruction of historic white culture, white community, especially Protestant, as opposed to Catholic white community. And so they're just continuing to do it, whether it's Republican or Democrat. And then the preachers are preaching against it, I would add, because they don't want to be called racist and bigot and sexist now.
And of course, what has happened recently in Asheville, North Carolina?
Yeah, well, they killed off all those white people when they broke the dams, when the dams broke, and as it was calculated to do so. And they were historic white Protestant areas and Baptist.
And it wasn't just Asheville, North Carolina. It's pretty much all of Western North Carolina.
Yeah, and it goes into Tennessee, and that's right.
Okay, which was basically, that's Appalachia. And historically, that was settled by the Scots-Irish.
That's right. The Scotch-Irish, there were Protestants and Baptists. There were no Catholics living there. So we're going to terminate more Protestant and Baptist populations, and it's going to continue. That's why we need to declare independence for our own survival of our state or of our county, because it's going to continue. Go ahead.
Well, and of course, we could talk about what happened, what's been going on for several years in Springfield, Ohio. And do you remember the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris? And one of the things that Trump brought up was they're eating the Haitians are eating the dogs.
Yeah, the savage Haitians, the savage Haitians who have savagely destroyed Haiti, reduced it to a hellhole that no white person wants to live in. And the Dominicans of the Dominican Republic have a huge barbed wire fence keeping the Haitians out. No, they can come in and they can pillage and start barbecuing the cats and the dogs. But you know what? Maybe the animal rights people might wake up and say, you know what? We don't want these people here. The left-wing socialist, communist, animal rights people might just raise a ruckus. We shall see. Because I saw the video where the black Haitian is, he's got all the hair off the cat and he's roasting the cat. Yep. That's just like Chinese. The Chinese love St. Bernard. They really regard St. Bernard as a delicacy. And when the Chinese eat the cats, they first of all throw them in hot boiling water to get all that adrenaline in the meat because they like that sharp cat meat flavor. That's the Chinese. So you got the savage blacks, the savage Chinese coming over to what was once some sort of a high white Protestant culture and civilization and destroying it for the benefit of the Jesuit order. But go ahead.
Okay, if I could just mention one other thing off topic. One of my guilty pleasures is I like watching Red Ice TV with Henrik and his blonde, what was her name, Lana? And yes, I know they're very much into blaming the Jews, but okay, nobody's perfect. But they recently showed a video, or actually this was yesterday. They showed a video of a U.S. Navy recruiting office in Alhambra, California, which is
your time. Just take your time. Go ahead.
Okay, so Henrik and Lana showed a U.S. Navy recruiting video from Alhambra, California. And all the people in the office are Chinese. They're speaking, I guess, Mandarin. They're either born in China or they just moved here from China. So all the Navy personnel and the civilians are speaking Chinese.
And they're for the U.S. Navy. Are they in the U.S. Navy?
Correct.
Uh-huh. Well, that's good because the Jesuits need a nice big fifth column of Chinese into the Navy to have a successful Chinese invasion. So that'll be nice. And of course, the Chinese are absolutely devoted to their own race of people. And they will show their devotion when that fifth column betrays the Navy or whatever they're going to be doing to facilitate a successful Chinese invasion. Yep.
And, I mentioned this before, so forgive me for repeating myself. There's a comic book character named Captain America, and he's been around for about 80 years or so, and his civilian name is Steve Rogers. Well, I guess DC Comics decided to rebrand Captain America as a black man. Now, hitherto for over 80 years.
Of course, they've rebranded the Witch of the West, Wicked Witch of the West, and the Wizard of Oz as a black woman. Now we're going to have a black man. Maybe we need a black Santa Claus too, because that wouldn't bother me. But we're just blacken everything because we're going to blacken and Africanize the whole culture, so there's nothing left of anything white in this place. Go ahead.
Well, actually, they haven't done that with old Nick, but his boyfriend is black.
Is that right? Well, that's a nice twist.
So, anyhow, but speaking of race swapping, this happened a few years ago. I guess the Little Mermaid is based on a Hans Christian Andersen novel from the 19th century, like 150 years ago, or
which is white and Dutch and Protestants. But go ahead.
Yes. So hitherto, the Little Mermaid, Jasmine, has been white. She has red hair. But the people who run Disney, the Jesuits who run Disney, in their infinite wisdom, decided to make her black.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Africanized, blackenized, everything. Yeah. To further build the white new right, because the white people, even the women, are getting angry about it and upset about it. So that's just what the Jesuits want. Just what they want. An angry, white, victimized, beaten down culture to then weaponize them and bring them into the new right and then turn them loose. And that's exactly right. We've weaponized the blacks. Now we're going to weaponize the whites. Go ahead, George. We got about another 5 minutes and we got to go. So go ahead.
Okay. So, well, you apologize for the technical glitches we had earlier. And, well, something I just wanted to mention in closing. This was, we just commemorated the 83rd anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And just for clarification.
Was that the sneak attack, George? Was that the sneak attack that nobody knew they were coming and they just showed up there and sunk those ships and everybody was shocked and nobody, is that the one you're talking about, George?
Or actually, it could be something else. Well, actually, just for clarification, that name, Pearl Harbor, is a psyop because a more accurate way of describing it would be to call it the Japanese attack on the U.S. military installations in the Hawaiian territories, which, yes, did include Pearl Harbor, but you're also talking Hickam Field, or later Hickam Base, Air Base, and Schofield Barracks, and there are other installations that got hit as well.
But they didn't
So, yes,
they didn't attack dry dock repair, and they didn't attack the oil storage, which was the third wave that Admiral Nagomo was to attack, and he decided, well, I don't think I'm going to do it, because if I attack that, that's the end of that naval base. And that shows you how that was another design just to fire up and get the war going, but not to really do the damage that would have rendered Hawaii unusable, and the war would have had to been waged out of San Diego to Japan with no Hawaii. And so Admiral Nagumo was another conspirator, just like FDR, in making this happen.
Well, can I just mention one other conspirator, one other coadjutor?
Sure.
And that has to do with somebody who most people have not heard about. The territorial governor of Hawaii was Joseph Poindexter. And he was a personal friend of FDR's. And he was a member, he was a high-level Freemason and a member of the Elks Lodge.
Well, yeah, Brother Freemason FDR, Scottish Rite, Brother Scottish Rite Freemason Poindexter. Of course, it's a Masonic operation, subject to Edmund Walsh, at the time, the super Jesuit in D.C. Yep. Makes sense.
So I thought, I not talked about Pearl Harbor in a number of years because I thought we had exhausted that topic. Well, it turns out there's always something new to learn.
Amen. And what is that, George? What is?
Well, Joe Poindexter was.
Poindexter. I got you. Okay.
He was the territorial governor of Hawaii.
I told you about the guy that I knew that called me one day. His name was Ken Winchell, and he was a lieutenant in the Navy, and he was dating the daughter of the royal family in Hawaii. And the father, who would have been the king, called up Ken and says, I want you to come to my mansion. I want to tell you what your government did to us Hawaiians here in Hawaii. And he set forth the whole conspiracy, exactly what FDR did, knowing that the Japanese attack was coming. And after he finished talking to Ken Winchell, Ken went AWOL. He refused to go back to his ship. He later turned himself in. I don't know if he went to jail for a while, but Ken told me that story. I'll never forget it. Okay, George, do we have any final comments we want to make?
Well, I guess I can pick this up next week. So shall I give my contact information?
Of course.
So if people have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, please email me at George Widger, GEORWIDGER at 1969@gmail.com. Once again, that is George Widger, GEORWIDGER 1969@gmail.com. If they did not get that from you, or rather they did not catch that, they can get it from you.
Amen. All right, Brother George. Well, I'll see you next time that you're on, hopefully one day next week. In the meantime, this is Brother Eric John Phelps, 24/7 World Radio Podcast here on December the 14th, which is a Saturday night, 2024. You can send your gifts to RBPB Church, RBPB Donate at Comcast.net if you want to use PayPal, or you can send it to, with my Cash App, which is #, Eric, ERIC, John, JON, Phelps, PHELPS, or you can send a check to RBT, P.O. Box 306, Newmanstown, Pennsylvania. So appreciate your gifts, appreciate your prayers for us 2 minutes a day, lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting. And may you continue to serve the Lord to do his will as you read his word, the AV 1611 Reformation Bible in its present edition of 1769. So until next time we meet, Lord bless, Maranatha.
Well, God bless.